Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bruno's Geek Reviews D&D Variants, where we take a look at unofficial versions of Dungeons & Dragons. So today we're going to take a look at Lamentations of the Flame Princess, also named Weird Fantasy Role-Playing. And what I have here, what I'm going to review, is the Grindhouse Edition, which is a sturdy small box set. And I actually have to say, even though it's unrelated to the game itself, I really like this. I'm usually not a fan of box sets because, they're easily breakable, they occupy space, they're not as easy to carry as a book. But in this case, this is something you can easily put inside a bag, and it's really resistant. It's doubled over, and this is sturdy. I like it. Now, as a quick side note, if you look at the picture on the cover, I guess you can see there's a little bit of nudity in there, and behind they actually tell you it's actually said explicit content, 18 plus. This is not a joke, and I don't mean just because of a little flash of boobies there. The content of this game, what you'll see inside, the imagery and other things like that, are not for younger players. And if you're a parent, make sure you put it on the top shelf. Keep it away from your kids. This is really made for horror D&D, and not in the way of not in the gothic horror way that Ravenloft used to do, or still does, I guess. But more in a really, a mix of Lovecraftian horror, of gore movies, stuff like that. It's the imagery is really disturbing. I'm not kidding. Think the worst you've seen of heavy metal, death metal album covers, maybe times two sometimes. Anyway, just a fair warning. So we're gonna take a look at the actual box just quickly, because I really appreciate it. First of all, you see when you open it, there's some flavor text here, and on the inside of the box. Well, now we can see it because there's the books in the way, the books inside, but inside you have flavor text here, outside. It really puts you in the mood for the game. That's really well done. Another thing I appreciate, this is both in content, physical content of the box set, and content as the material written inside the books. It doesn't assume that because this is kind of like a OSR, old school Renaissance type of D&D game, that it imitates the rules of older versions of D&D to a certain extent. It doesn't assume that you're going to be a veteran role player. It really gives everything needed for new players. Like if you never played a role-playing game before and you pick this up, you're in, well, it's in your hands, but you're in very good hands. So it comes with a little set of small dice, already it comes with it. You have the 3 books, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, that are inside. And it comes even with character sheets that are set apart. And they're small and easy to pass around and copy. So that's very good. I really appreciate that this game doesn't assume that everyone has been playing for years. Now the books. You have Rules and Magic, which is kind of like the player's handbook, if you will. You have the referee book, the Dungeon Master's Guide, basically for this game, and you have the tutorial book. This book is really great. And now you might say, you might think, well, I've been playing D&D for years. I don't need no tutorial book. I'll just stick to... No, seriously. Even if you're a veteran game master, if anything, you can appreciate what's mentioned in these books, because it doesn't the book doesn't assume that you're going to play D&D and it's going to be the best case scenario, everything goes right. No, it actually, I've never seen it before, because in every other role-playing game when they mention how to run a game, give advice, sometimes they'll mention if you run into a problem, blah blah blah. But this is the most down-to-earth, realistic version of this kind of tutorial, where even the example of the game has a player who constantly argues with the DM. And it actually touches on problems you can actually come across into a game. It tells you never to railroad your game. Don't railroad your players. Never do the thing where you go, well, telling a player you can't do that because I didn't plan for that. It doesn't do that crap. Yeah, I mean, it tells you not to do it, and that's great because no player wants to be told by a game master you can't do that, because then you might as well play a video game or watch a movie. The whole point of playing a role-playing game is that you have freedom of choice beyond any other type of game or fiction you can come across. Also, small detail, it's really cool because behind the little booklets you have like quick rules references like saving throws, stuff like that. That's really useful for DMs. You don't have to flip through the book as much. It's pretty rules light, and it actually has some very specific rules that are useful. Oddly enough, there are some maritime rules if you want to get into a boat. That's oddly specific, but I mean, it's welcome, why not? But there's rules in there that have to do with, for example, what speed can you go at if you're drawing a map as you go along a dungeon? That's very interesting. Because, what if a player says, well, I'm drawing the map as we go to keep track of this maze? Well, so okay, that would slow you down. So there's little rules like that. Now, when comparing it to other D&D games, which is kind of the point of this series of videos, there's some very interesting aspects. For example, no one can see in complete darkness in this game, not even dwarves. So, that is important with the horror aspect. You're not going to have any character who's going to be able to see entirely what's going on if they're in complete darkness, which I think is important for a horror mood. Then you have like the very old versions of D&D, like races like halflings, elves, and dwarves are actually their own class. It's not like a race class division. It's actually, if you want to play a non-human, you're a class in itself. This, like maybe one little flaw for me, but other people may appreciate it, is that in this game, what you can do at later levels is very similar to what you can do at first level, only better, in the sense that fighters never get any skills. And also interestingly enough, the fighter is the only class to advance with a base attack progression. That means that the fighter is the only class in this game that actually gets better at hitting stuff. The other classes always stay the same. They get they get better at other things, but they never get better at hitting stuff. The only thing that makes them better, I guess, is the additional hit points. But in that sense, again, it might depend on your preferences for the games and everything, but I have to admit, it does make the fighter very relevant when compared to other versions of D&D, because the fighter will be the best at fighting, because there's some editions where if you build a character a certain way, for example, a cleric, a paladin can make the fighter kind of like redundant. This is not going to happen in this game, I can assure you of that. So it's a D&D game where the roles are very specific for each player. You're not going to go outside your box, if you will. You can't do a versatile character as well, I mean. Okay. But beyond that, the rules are light, and it flows very well. It plays very easily. It's a game that encourages you to not worry about giving stats for every single thing. Just if you need something in the game, just do it. Which is also good, because actually even if you look at the adventure models for this game, it's not even standard D&D all the time. You have very often like adventures for 17th century Europe. So yeah, that's different. I might actually run a horror Victorian game with this at some point. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, so basically this, these books establish a really good mood. And the spells for, stuff like the spells for the spellcasters are a lot more dangerous. You know how in movies, mages are always like, one shouldn't take magic lightly, and stuff like that. In this game, it's true. It's real. Because, you might summon a monster, if the spell goes wrong, you might actually find yourself summoning an army of monsters, and that completely changes your campaign world. So you don't take magic lightly. It's a game where high mortality rate for players is encouraged. I mean, not gratuitously, but I guess less than a game like Call of Cthulhu, I guess. But it's still, compared to D&D, they're pretty. They encourage the game master to be harsh but fair. So that's interesting. You know, they encourage you to actually put them in danger. It's not a game that tells you to roll behind the screen, to lie about, you know, the roll of the dice, so you can tell the player he survived even though he failed the throw. Actually, you know, no, it actually tells you, like, you know, the dice fall where they fall. So that's interesting. It's actually a philosophy I enjoy for these games. What else? Oh yeah, interestingly enough, the way monsters and experience works. Monsters in this game, like, you have like maybe 2 examples of built monsters. Other than that, there's no bestiary, because the philosophy of this game is basically, if you have a monster book, then players know what to expect. Instead, they give you guidelines on how to create monsters, and that's it. So players will never know what they're gonna throw at them, because it'll be your own creations. That's interesting, and it works for this. I wouldn't recommend it for every version of D&D, but for this version, it's great. Also, one thing I might enjoy a little bit less, but it's part of the game. So, you know, if I had to do a game, I would stick to it, because, you know, if you're gonna try a different thing, try it. Is that experience works differently. In this game, you don't get as much experience for killing things, which is actually good. It's a horror game, you know, it's survival, makes sense. But the other thing is, you get experience, you would think, then for role playing or for story. It's mostly for treasure you manage to bring home. So it gives you experience points for treasure. So it does feel a little bit odd to me, but I guess it goes back to kind of the old versions of D&D of, like, you know, killing stuff and looting. But it does seem weird with this more down-to-earth approach for D&D. Oh yeah, and down-to-earth, like I said, like I mentioned how Castles and Crusades was kind of like low power. I would say this game is even more so. But again, in a good way. So anyway, that's it. Like, this is a game where either you're really not gonna like it, or you're gonna find it really fun. And I think personally, it's an inspiring game. And even if you wouldn't use it, I still, if you're an RPG collector, or, you know, if you like to read about kind of like advice on how to play games, I actually even recommend it, if only for that, just because of the material, like the fluff, if you will, like the tips it gives and the art you'll find. It's very inspirational for those types of games, and even for, I would say, mainstream D&D. So that's it. Thanks for watching.